without it means communication. Nothing about it without it means cooperation. It doesn't mean that you call us serial complainers through the vexations policy. It means you sit down and say, what are you complaining about? Why are you complaining about it? Let's see if we can sort that out. My question is, are you going to reform your service, because it's absolutely useless. You put in a complaint and you have managers investigating the person you're complaining about, who is their actual worker. So it's really and truly what I'm asking the HSE is for respect, dignity and human rights. Because at the moment, as far as I can see, they are not there.
Thanks,
Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to see if I can, seeing as Tom and Joe and everyone there on the rest of the board is starting to look a bit bored, I thought I'd try and include you in this, okay? And where possible, I'm going to try and refrain from using the Tourette's phrase book in my questions. So I'm going to start with a couple of observations. Pat, when you were giving your presentation there, you mentioned that in the time to move on section. I noticed there was no mention of the waiting lists. There was mention of the numbers in congregated settings and the numbers that are in residential, but nothing about the people who are in the ever-increasing waiting list who won't even get a place. I noticed there a comment about respite, including alternative respite models. It seems more a case recently that alternative respite models is the only respite model. And one of my questions for everyone on the board is, or sorry, at the top table, my daughter has multiple disabilities. She can't communicate, she can't walk, she can't feed herself. Her HSE needs assessment states that she needs 2 people to help her toilet. How is it that policy can assume that a volunteer in the community who doesn't have hoists, who doesn't have medical training, who doesn't have a downstairs bedroom, how is policy to suit my daughter's respite needs? And I'd like to ask that to all the people on the table. Would you think that you are in a position to provide that service which policy seems to be geared towards providing? And just to follow or finish off for Pat, when are we going to stop forcing providers to transfer resources away from respite to prop up other services? Over to you guys.
I'm going to come back to you now. David. Christine, then.
My name is David Hall. I work in St Michael's House. Pat, can I ask you something? Will you ask the government in here to tell what's her name? The girl,
Patricia.
To stop calling these services and people with disability, because I tell you why, the government and you and HSE need to put money into services, because there's lots of services in St Michael's House that have lost jobs. And as Pahidi, will you go to the government, will you go to Enda and Opinion Hall, Minister Harris, tell him to meet, organise your money, get the money funded back into services?
Thanks, David. So to stop cutting
Stop,
services.
yeah.
Christine,
And there's a few questions. The first one was they were going on about Portran being the only place that's still in session. There's a Lota down in Park that hasn't been mentioned. The racial list as well, which is downright ludicrous. And I'd love the HSE to, and you, Pat, to at least instead of sitting back on past seats, to come around to meet up with the service users and come and see what the man is just have to say about his children being severely disabled. So ludicrous it is.
Okay. Thanks,
We
Christine.
keep coming up with sending down questions there and there, and I can't understand for one moment. I just thought Finland will make a better job than that they even landed up and getting the penny back as it's as if he blooming bribed us that he landed back as a teacher.
Okay, thanks.
Downright ludicrous.
Sorry, just two questions. One for Patricia and possibly one for Mary. In relation to Vision for Change for 2006 document, is that still on the table? Those recommendations, are they gone?
The answer to your question is it still is government policy, Vision for Change. It stated at the time that, on all government commentators at the time stated it was a 10-year policy. So if that's the case, it expires in 2016. When in 2016? I don't know, because there's no date on that policy. As you know, there was an implementation review group that was established. In fact, there was two established by previous ministers of state, and they were time-limited groups. And the last one expired a couple of years ago. And the Commission has advocated for a review of Vision for Change. I know when the programme for the last government, it was on the cards that it was going to be reviewed, and it was a priority. In our meetings with the Department of Health, we posed the questions about its status, and we were told that it was being reviewed, but I note it's not explicitly mentioned in the programme for government now.
Thanks, Pat. Sorry, Mary, just in relation to, we bandy around a lot of numbers in relation to 6,300 living in a residential and 2,300 living in congregate settings. We must remember that these are people. These are not numbers. And there is a fear as well that, the 2,300 people living in congregate settings, quite a lot of those people are people with complex medical needs. Is there a danger that some of these people may end up in nursing homes?
Okay, come back to that now. So just two last questions over here, and then we're going to go back to the panel with all the questions. Catherine, and then behind Catherine as well, or behind Catherine and then Catherine.
It's just you've referred a few times to the event in Tullamore, I think it was a few weeks ago now, where there were sort of, I suppose, exposing, if you like, of new directions being implemented amongst certain service providers. And I have to say I was struck by how deluded some of them seem to be about their ability, if you like, or their interpretation, I suppose, actually, of new directions. It seems to me that there could be a difficulty with new directions in terms of interpretation. I know, Anne, you presented some information in terms, statistically, in terms of, self-assessment that service providers have done in terms of were they implementing new directions or not. And I suppose just based on anecdotal evidence from around the country, the numbers just didn't seem to stack up to me. So I have a concern around how are you going to kind of impose a standard on new directions, which really does have a completely different value base to what is underpinning the entire HSE, if you like, at the moment. And I'd just like to know how you're going to address that going forward if we're to have equity in the system, which really is crucial. And I think, as citizens, we're entitled to equity in systems. So.
And behind that, so this is a question around monitoring and implementation of new directions and organisations who are traditional providers describing what they're doing as new directions, but is anyone actually monitoring that to say it actually constitutes real change?
Yeah.
Oh,
well said. Well said. That's what we need.
Sorry, Paddy, how you doing? Sorry, thanks very much to Inclusion Ireland for organising the day, and to the panel, and in particular to Pat up there. You're a brave man, Pat. Could I just say one or two things? Firstly, I'm hearing about funding here, and it seems to me, as somebody who has a business background, that there's a bit of misnomer here about funding at the HSE. We're hearing about budgets of $1.5 billion or $2 billion, I don't know the exact figures. But when I look at service providers and I look at their costs, basically their main costs are in wages and salaries. So when you strip that out and you look at USCs and PAYE and PSI, You know, the net budget cost here would estimate around 50% of what we've been told. So if we could get some joined up thinking perhaps between the revenue and the HSE, we might get down to the net cost of providing services. That's the first point I'd like to make. The second point I'd like to make is on a personal basis, and it came up in the presentation there that not one glove fits every situation. And I'd like to ask Pat, you know, will you give an assurance here that from now on, in terms of primary care services for people who have profoundly intellectually challenged children and who are incapacitated also, that they would be provided with transport to their daycare services? Because I've been campaigning for 12 months. I've had my son at home, and I only got him back into care about 6 weeks ago, and it all had to do with transport. Now, I'm not the only family in this situation. There are many families in this situation, and I'd like an undertaking here that if we have established that one glove doesn't fit all situations, that I won't be getting the answer, that it's not the responsibility of the HSE to provide transport. The service was provided up till the child was 18. He didn't get out of bed and walk the next day. His circumstances didn't change. They remained the same. The family circumstances remained the same. Why was the service withdrawn? I understand that there are children who may have mild disabilities who are capable of travelling on a bus, who may be capable of getting their way to the daycare centre. But there are many families whose children suffer from seizures and need assistance on the bus, and they need transport to the facilities. And I'm not alone in that issue, and I'd like it to be addressed.
Thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to go back to the panel. I'm going to come to you on my way back to the panel, and that's it then. I'm going to hold it there a sec. I'll come back to you. The lights are going down, so somebody's giving us a message. Just here.
Hi, my name is Rose. Rashid is well aware of me. As he breathes a sigh up there. My brother is in a residential situation. He's been there as a service user for 30 plus years. He's there as a full-time resident for 20 years. I've heard everybody speak, and I've been to various different meetings down in where my brother is about New Beginnings. New Beginnings applies to the new incomers that are coming into the place where my brother is the service provider that it is. My brother is not part of New Beginnings. It doesn't seem to cover the old New Directions. It doesn't seem to cover the older stock, the older people that are there who've been there for so long. The other